This is taken from a story called Imprinting, which comes from the Novella in Flash toy train. Cocked Oak, East Midlands, 2018. They met at the Toy Cafe, a gimmicky eatery where Yvonne sometimes took their granddaughter. Peter ordered an espresso and lemon slice covered in lurid jelly beans. He couldn't remember if his hands had been shaking as much before he arrived. He approached the table with his cake. There was no welcoming smile. His chair squeaked as he pulled it out and stood waiting. Sally's hands were wrapped around her coffee. Isn't this place meant for kids? The play area outside was all weathered wood and coloured rope. Several children ran in and out of the apparatus. No, Sally said. It's for anyone. I like it here. The coffee's good. Despite the low winter sun burning through the windows, Sally looked cold. Her ash-coloured hair appeared flatter and her skin less pink. She was thinner than when he'd last seen her. Sometimes Peter thought it strange that they'd ended up living in the same area, back where they used to live, long ago. They had left Leicestershire at different times, but returned, like bees to a hive. When he returned, he'd hoped their paths wouldn't cross, even though their parents were still friends. So, Peter asked. Sit down. Sally's voice was tarmac rough. He broke a piece of cake off with his fork and toyed with it. Like many things, the anticipation of the slice would likely be better than the experience. Peter hoped Sally would get straight to the point and not make small talk. What did you want? This is for you, Sally said, pushing a die-cast model train engine from its box. She pushed it towards him. Like the one you had when you were a boy. What for? She'd often spoken in riddles when they were younger, and he'd never been sure whether she was verbally ambushing him. I suppose my granddaughter might like it, he said, turning the wheels absent-mindedly. It's for you, not her. She wiped her lips with a crumpled serviette. Put it somewhere prominent, where you can see it every day. Why? And when you get used to it, she said, as if he hadn't spoken, so that you no longer really see it, move it someplace else. What's this about? My cancer's back, Sally said, as if she were talking about a forthcoming trip to a destination she didn't much care for. And I want to tidy things up. How is it you doctors refer to these things and get my affairs in order? And that involves giving me a child's toy? Peter tapped the engine. Perhaps he should offer her his condolences. Neither of us believes in gods and ghosts or pacts with the devil, Sally said. And this is in lieu of haunting you. Are you going to die? We're both going to die, Sally said. Everybody dies. I won't, Peter said, mildly irritated. Not yet. You don't always know when your time is up. His cake was too sweet. I do whatever I can to prolong life. I heard you nearly died during your appendectomy to me last year. Sally had finished her coffee and was spooning residual froth into her mouth. He hated it when people did that. But I didn't die. That surgeon was incompetent. Ought to be struck off. Peter shuddered at the memory. I'd live forever if I could. I haven't got long. She might have meant she needed to be somewhere different, or she might have meant something else altogether. So, what do you want me to do? Peter hoped it wasn't anything that involved anyone else. Shut the fuck up and listen. Remember this? Sally repeated the words he'd said to her long ago. No one else will have you. She was mocking him. putting on a childlike voice, repeating what he'd said when she'd pushed him away. Make the most of this. It might be the only time anyone will look at you. Words he'd almost forgotten. Words designed only to satisfy his pubescent curiosity and urges. How could she be so angry about something that was only child's play? Why was she still thinking about it? I'll only do it once. Just once. Her mimicry was cruel. Peter felt his temper rise. Oh, but you didn't do it just once. Can you even imagine what that felt like? Peter had no idea, so he said nothing. You took something from me. More than my innocence. You stole my self-worth. Do you understand what I'm saying? Peter didn't know what to say. He considered leaving. Was this all Sally was going to do? Berate him for something that happened half a century ago? Was it possible she thought he'd actually damaged her? Well, she said. Well, what? Peter picked the engine up, inspected its wheels. Do you have any comprehension of what all those years of cornering someone into submission does? Peter thought about Uncle Robert. Is that what the old man had done? Had he cornered Peter into submission when he'd invited him into his bed? That's not what it had felt like at the time. I don't know what to say. Bemused at her outrage. He really didn't. And yet, hadn't he always known he shouldn't have done what he did? You don't have to say anything. If you aren't enough of a human being to know what you took from me, don't bother saying anything at all. Sally sounded less angry, more upset. But Peter still couldn't find any words. Do you have any idea what it's like when you don't know how to say no because you don't understand what's being asked of you? Sally took the engine, spun its wheels. I was fucking 8 years old when you started. 8. She spat the word out. Or was I even younger? Your insidious ways, your creeping hands, those games I never understood. They were just games, Peter said. We were just fucking games. She looked as if she was going to take a swipe at him. Imagine someone's dirty fingers in your most private places. She was putting Peter in her shoes, in her clothes, her blue dress. Someone bigger than you, stronger, cunning. Sally went deeper and deeper, cataloguing what he'd done, spelling out the details, his fingers, her hidden tears, how the smell of him had made her feel sick, how he'd behaved as if her body was his plaything, how she couldn't tell anyone because he'd said everyone would blame her. Peter worried someone else might hear and wanted her to stop, but she wouldn't. And had he really said that? He couldn't remember. But then wasn't she partly responsible? And another thing. Yes, what else? Did you do what you did to me? To your daughter? What the fuck, of course not, he hesitated. I never! But he had come close. Wasn't she the most beautiful thing he'd ever seen? Because even if you didn't, somebody else probably did, Sally continued. Some desperate little shit will have asked your princess to squeeze his dick and told her she was worth nothing simply because he wasn't getting it anywhere else. There was a silence while Peter swallowed his rage. The barrister glanced across at them. He pushed his chair back, ready to leave. You're not going yet, Sally said. I need you to promise something. What? I want an agreement, she said, lifting her cup to her lips, as if she'd forgotten it was empty. Her wrists were bone thin. About what? Peter hated oblique gestures. Was she going to tell someone what he'd done? He had nothing to fear. No one would believe Sally over a man of his standing. Think of it as a contract. When you look at my gift, relive what you did. But don't worry, your dirty secret is safe, provided you listen. He dropped his shoulders to show he wasn't intimidated. What do you want? Every time you look at this, she tapped the train on the table, tell yourself you'll never do to anyone else what you did to me. Sally's forehead was beaded in sweat. Was that all? He felt like laughing. It could have been awkward if she'd actually started saying things. Thank you very much, and goodbye.